Monster win for the Duke basketball team. For the first time since 2019, Duke picks up a top 25 victory on the road. They knock off Arizona. It means a whole lot. We'll tell you why here on Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome on into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Glad to have you here with us again. Second show of the day. We got to give you double the content for the big-time win for Duke basketball over Arizona. It is Monday, November 25th, 2024. Here on this one, we'll have our pal Ryan Lohman at the Duke Nation joining us on the program to talk about the big win that was for Duke basketball over Arizona as the Blue Devils knock off the Wildcats by a score of 69-55. If you have not done so already, Locked On Blue Devils is available for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. You can watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Like this video, share it with your friends. Continue supporting us over here at Locked On Blue Devils. Really appreciate the growth that we've seen over the last few weeks. We want to keep this going for sure. Check us out on X at LO_Blue Devils, and I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. The defensive performance that Duke had against Arizona was second to none. It's a team that coming into the game, the Wildcats had 88 points as their fewest point total that they had scored so far this season. Subtract 33 from that and you get 55, and that's how many Duke gave up at their place. Really impressive defensive performance for Duke, and I think that sets the tone on what could be a really productive season for the Blue Devils, who've got another big test coming up tomorrow against Kansas. So to break it all down with us, our good friend Ryan Lohman at the Duke Nation on X is here to talk all things Duke basketball with us, man. And I can't get over what this defense was able to do. It was one thing to set the shot clock era record, the fewest points given up against Wofford for a Duke team with 35. And then they go on the road. It's a top 25 team in the country. It's a team that scored so much, and they're held to just 55 points. Unreal.
Yeah, it really was. It was a performance that I'm not sure was super surprising after the Wofford one, but you don't think of like Wofford as this highly touted offense. And so going into Arizona, who can shoot the ball, they have shooters. They have one that we are very familiar with in Caleb Love, and holding them to under 30% from three. They shot just over 25%, under 40% from the field in general. Caleb Love was 1 of 9. Just a lot of really, really good defense. Shout out to Tyrese Proctor. He's kind of dominated Caleb Love in their matchups as of late. So awesome to see. Great game planning by the staff and Shire. The other thing I think they mentioned on the broadcast is the offensive rebounding that Duke limited Arizona to. They're leading the nation in offensive rebounds, and Duke held them to their fewest of the season. So just an all-around great effort. It gave me, I do think Arizona has its flaws, and I don't know if they're going to be where a lot of people thought they were going to end up at the end of the year. But it gave me confidence going into an environment like that with the game plan that we had, and executed it to basically perfection. Going into Kansas now, it gives me a lot more confidence. Not that, like I said, not that I wasn't confident, but like now that we've kind of seen what this team can be, and I don't even think that was their A game. Like I think that was like a B+ performance for their standards. Even that's not a shot at the team. I just think they can even do more. Like they just have that talent, and super excited to see what they can do against Kansas now after that. And it's going to be a fun one for sure.
And I think the defense is going to show up to play. I think the question in all of these games throughout the course of the year for Duke is going to be, okay, can you knock down the shots from the outside? Can you not go in these big scoring droughts yourself? But if you're able to lock in on the defensive end of the floor like we've seen Duke do so far outside of a couple of stretches within that Kentucky game, I think we're going to be pretty pleased with what we've seen. In the sport over the last few years, it's becoming more and more popular for college basketball coaches to identify their offensive and defensive coordinators, much like football coaching staffs. And for Duke associate head coach Jay Lucas, he's labeled as their defensive coordinator. And you look at the Arizona game in particular, I thought Duke's ability to close out possessions by doing the simple thing of just rebounding and boxing out and keeping Arizona from creating second chances and adding to their point total with those second chance points was one of the bigger things. Like, yes, They were missing some shots, but that was some of the Wofford game was a lot of wide open shots that were being missed and Duke's length kind of altering those shots and that sort of thing. I just thought Duke was tougher on the glass and on the boards, and that was one of the bigger reasons why Duke was able to be so dominant defensively against Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I'm just pulling up the stats again because I knew the rebounding margin was pretty heavy in Duke's favor. And we out-rebounded them by, I believe, 13 rebounds overall. And against a team like Arizona, who has been dominating the glass all season, that's pretty dang impressive. And for Duke in the second, I mean, you mentioned it prior to your rebounding take there, is that there's going to be times this season where we're just going to need the offense to step up. And fortunately for Duke in the second half, it happened only come from three players, with Kahn, Caleb, and Cooper being the only ones to score a bucket in the second half, which is like, okay, if we can get by Arizona with only having three different players score in the second half, great, but also a little bit of concern to an extent. It kind of gets back to your point of there's going to be times when we have stretches or lulls in the offense. But the one thing I will say is that it did seem like every time Arizona gained just a little bit of a momentum, they hit a 3-pointer to cut it to 6 or cut it to 7, Duke had an answer every single time. And so the defense was probably the most impressive part. But after that Kentucky meltdown, seeing them not give up the lead to momentum and get guys into foul trouble the way we did against Kentucky, it was very impressive to me. And that gives me confidence going forward, especially when you have such a mix of young guys and old guys.
Yeah.
I think that is a testament to the leadership of guys like Sion James, Mason Gillis, and Malik Brown coming in and doing what they did, just being the rock and the glue of this team. And it's going to show up time after time this season, I think.
Yeah, trust me, Ryan. We're going to give the people an offensive conversation in this one too, and what to make of who's scoring, who's playing, who's out there on the floor, and that sort of thing. But I think just setting the tone defensively for Duke has been the big thing. And what was great is that, down the stretch, Duke would make the big-time shot when they needed a bucket most. But even beyond that, when the big-time shot was made on the other end, Arizona wasn't able to answer.
Nope.
Unlike the Kentucky game, because Duke was able to be like, okay, there's our bucket. Now let's go follow that bucket up by getting a stop too. That was really encouraging to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And my biggest thing was the 3-point shooting and holding them to under 30% there, because in the Kentucky game, they didn't shoot the ball well, but in the second half, they seemed to turn it on pretty quickly. And I don't think we were getting out as quickly on closeouts as we were against Arizona. So I think there was a definite sign of pregame planning of making sure you're getting out there, getting a hand in their face, and just playing face-up defense on them when you can. So super impressed by that.
Exactly what the Duke basketball team was able to do. Set the tone defensively. They pick up a big marquee win. All right, we'll step aside. When we come back, we do have some offensive thoughts to give you. Cooper Flagg leads the way. Duke's knocking down shots from the outside. But how many players are actually contributing for this team? We'll talk about all of that and so much more here on the other side when Locked On Blue Devils continues in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. That's right. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. It's Thanksgiving week, so we've got a lot of football games taking place throughout the course of the week. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, we're moving forward. We're talking Duke basketball's big win over Arizona in Tucson as the Blue Devils win 69-55. Ryan, we take a look at the box score for Duke offensively. They go 9 for 25. That's 36% from the outside. Still not the best percentage for Duke, but certainly way more than the 4 3-pointers that they made against Kentucky. And I think with this Duke team, we've seen it so far this year. If they're able to make shots from the outside, they're going to be really tough to beat.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was nice in the second half to see Caleb Foster come on a little bit. I think in the first half it was again started out as a struggle for him. I think he got pulled a little bit earlier than normal in place of, or for Sion James to come in and take his spot. But it was great to see him knock down some shots and kind of get into a groove in the second half. Obviously, Cooper Flagg's doing what we all kind of assumed and expected he would. He was a very high volume shooter in the Arizona game, and same with the Kentucky game. But tonight he obviously it stuck out a little more because he took twice as many shots as everybody else. I'm okay with that though. Like if that's what it's going to take to win these games, where we just say, hey, Cooper, go get a bucket. Like I'm fine with that for certain stretches of the game. Now I do think there's been this thing around Khan where, and this is just a complete hot take, but he didn't play in a lot of the types of games that Cooper Flagg played in high school, right? So we know Khan can fill up the stat sheet. We know he can shoot the ball really well. But granted, he didn't play in many national games. He didn't play in the McDonald's All-American game. I don't remember if he played in any of the All-Star games. He might have played in Jordan Brand or one of the other ones. But regardless, and not that those are big, high-pressure games, but you're playing in these big stadiums. You're playing in environments that you would be maybe more accustomed to seeing at the college level
on TV.
On TV, exactly. And so, like, Khan's playing fine. Like you can tell he's had his moments where maybe it's just been a little bit too big for him and forcing things that maybe he shouldn't, but he settled in a little bit nicer in this game. Didn't seem like he was forcing it as much, and just kind of played more calm. So I don't think people noticed. I'm not saying I noticed that, and like I'm the only one that did, but it's a nice improvement from the Kentucky game going into this Kansas game, another neutral floor game against a really good opponent. Hopefully we can continue to see his consistency ramp up. And then Tyrese Proctor, man, in the first half he was really good. Second half was kind of he shot the ball a little bit more poorly, but I would attest that to probably guarding Caleb Love and being as active as he was on defense. So that was to be expected in some capacity. So super happy about the offense for the most part. And Cooper Flagg, man, just an absolute stud all around, and is just, we're only a few games in and it's fun to see his improvement and him progress already. So give it another couple months and let's see where he's at too.
Yeah, we're 5 games into the year now. Kansas coming up tomorrow. A lot of people, myself included, before the season, we're jumping on that, hey, Con Knippel is going to be the leading scorer for this Duke team. It's not even going to be Cooper Flagg. If this rate continues, Cooper Flagg's just going to lead Duke in everything. He's going to be that great of a player, which is so fun to see. I'll go back to Con specifically on the offensive end of the floor. We've got the box score up for those watching us on YouTube. For those listening, it's 13 points on the day for Knippel, 4 of 11 shooting from the floor, 3 of 6 from three-point range. Unlike the Kentucky game where he goes 5 of 20, it did feel to me like Con was forcing anything, right. And in some ways, maybe you are such a great shooter. If you've got to look, go ahead and shoot it because there's a good chance it could fall. But I was more so impressed that Con was not trying to force anything and was looking for the best looks to shoot for the team. And it paid off because they were open looks. He knocked them down. And in turn, it looks like way more of an efficient game than the 5 of 20, 1 from 8 3-point range effort that he had against Kentucky. I thought the shot selection really improved for him too.
Exactly. And you can tell he wasn't forcing it. If you're just box score watching, he had 3 assists. I mean, he was moving the ball better this time, and I'll take a 50% from 3 shooting day from anybody in the team and Con included, any day of the week. And especially I'm fine with him having half of his shots coming from 3-point. And I'd probably even go as far as saying I wouldn't mind having more of his shots coming from the 3-point line. We know he can be aggressive. We know he can put the ball on the deck and get to the hoop, but I just don't think in certain games it's going to be his bread and butter. And not saying he just has to be a 3-point shooter, but early in the season, like get an understanding of what you can and can't do and what your athletic capabilities that you have when it comes to driving on some of these bigger, older college guys that you're just not used to going up to the last few years. So super impressed by that. The other thing I just wanted to call out was Sion James. Sorry. I always read it and say it wrong. Yeah. Sion James off the bench with his plus minus being 12, coming off the bench and having a plus minus that is second or third on the team is very impressive. I love the way he plays. He's always making impactful plays, whether it's offensively or defensively. He's not a liability on either end, in my opinion, and just makes good decisions. 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal. Like, just I love him. I wish we could have a guy like this on every Duke team, and having a plus minus like that off the bench is super impressive. And I just wanted to give flowers to him as well.
Absolutely. I mean, he's big time for Duke, and they're going to need him to continue to be that. Certainly, it's not been the start to the year that a lot of people were hoping for from Caleb Foster, but it's the experience of Sion James that has been really impressive for this Duke team. Although you look at the numbers, 2 of 6, not awful for Caleb Foster. Some of those outside shots from 3-point range, you want to see improve and that sort of thing. Individually, going into the game, Tyrese Proctor was shooting 50% from 3. He starts off the game 2 for 2, and then he finishes 2 for 7. So that kind of falls off. And then, as I pointed out going into the game, if you look at Con Knippel and you take out the Kentucky game, you take out the 1 for 8, Con was 9 of 18 from 3-point range, 50%. Now you can add in a 3 for 6, another 50% shooting. I mean, this Duke team is made of shooters, and I do think that, they need to continue shooting the basketball. There are going to be tough shooting nights, Ryan, but the numbers so far throughout the year are saying more times than not they're going to fall.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we even got to see go outside and hit a 3-pointer as well. I honestly would like to see Mason Gillis shoot a little bit more too. I felt like he's been passive with his, and I don't expect him to shoot 4 or 5 threes a game, but I do feel like in the minutes that he's played, he's had some couple open looks and he's been passive with it. So another guy that can knock down the outside shot as well. But I'm all on board for letting the threes fly as long as they're good shots and we're not forcing anything and we're running actions for certain shooters. I'm on board with it. With this team, we have 3, 4, 5 guys that can knock it down consistently, and then you get Cooper and Kaman and Sion and Mason, and they can all get you a couple a game if you need to. So I'm all for it, man. That's like early 2000s, late 2000s Duke basketball, especially when you had JJ Redick, and just let guys let it fly. I'm all for it.
All right, let's get to the offense and the numbers there in the second half specifically, as you alluded to a little bit earlier. I pointed out on X as soon as the game ended, and people certainly had thoughts throughout my Twitter feed on this, but 3 players score in the second half for Duke, just 3, and Cooper Flagg, Con Knippel, and Caleb Foster, which is certainly interesting. 35 points scored in the second half for Duke, and they were all scored by just 3 players. Although you look at this number, and a guy like Mason Gillis, just 1 shot attempt, Ryan, and I would love to see him let it fly a little bit more, but he only played 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And when we kind of look at what this Duke team has done, the bench somehow got shorter. We thought it was one thing in the Kentucky game, and then in a win over Arizona, 7 guys played, and I really don't know that you could throw Mason Gillis in there because he plays just 7 total minutes and hardly any at all in the second half.
Yeah, well, let me get to the second half scoring real quick. It is somewhat concerning. You can look at it maybe after the Kansas game or after another game, we're going to say, like, you got to have more guys that can score the ball. I just think this is going to be an anomaly. Tyrese Proctor in the second half was the only one that shot more than once outside of those 3. He shot 5 times. Otherwise, it was Kaman and Sion who shot the ball once each. So there's only 7 shots that came out of those that came different than Con, Caleb, and Cooper, and 5 of those were from Proctor. So couple of those get knocked down, and we're probably not talking about this stat very much, especially if Proctor hits a couple like he was in the first half. But it also is nice that
not to cut you off there.
No, you're good.
Or simply Tyrese Proctor knocks down 2 technical free throws.
Yeah.
I mean, how often does that happen? That Proctor goes to the line for 2 technical free throws. If he makes one of them, he scores, and this is not a talking point.
Exactly.
He didn't miss them.
And that was a soft technical, so he probably deserved to miss both of them anyways. But and when it's a guy like Cooper and Con who are filling up the stat sheet with they combine in the second half for 25 points or 27 points. So it's tough for me to sit here and be super concerned. Maybe if it becomes a trend, sure. But to your point about the bench depth, man, I can't figure it out. I feel like we always come into seasons as Duke fans like, oh, we're going to be 9-10 deep. But like, this was probably one of the few years where like I could have realistically saw us playing 9 consistently, maybe 10 if you just want to go back and forth between Harris and Evans. I don't know what to make of it, especially since Mason only played 7 minutes. I'm I think Shire has done a good job so far in his tenure, so it's hard for me to be like play more guys. But man, it'd be really cool to see Isaiah Evans come off the bench when this team's struggling offensively. He's going to shoot. There's no question about that. Like he's a good offensive player, and hey, if he gets a couple to fall, momentum changes and stuff. I don't know if it's a practice thing, if it's a defensive liability thing, but we have enough good defenders out there to mask one poor one. So I'd like to see more of it, but it doesn't seem like that's if they haven't played against Arizona and Kentucky, they ain't going to see him in Vegas against Kansas either. So
yeah, I went to look further in the numbers with those 7 minutes for Gillis, 3 of them in the second half. So 4 minutes in the first, 3 in the second. So really just did not get much run at all for Duke. So we'll see if at all that changes against Kansas in particular. We got to talk about that Kansas game. It's a big test. It's the number 1 team in the country. And we're going to break it all down after we take one more break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. We're back here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. That's right. When you're looking for the best place to find your tickets to see your favorite teams play live, you got to check out Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy events, theater shows, and so much more. I love Game Time Picks because it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through all those ticket offers. I love the seat views that you've got within the app where you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. How cool is it to know a little bit of what to expect when you arrive? The lowest price guarantee or Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, go ahead and create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Duke gets set for Kansas. Duke is not in Maui. They're not in the battle for Atlantis. They're not in the Virgin Islands or up in New York City. No kind of Feast Week tournament style action for Duke. They're not in Portland at a Nike event. Instead, they've got a standalone game against the Kansas Jayhawks at T-Mobile Arena late Tuesday night. Really excited to see this one play out. We don't have Kansas on the schedule in the Champions Classic, so both of these teams are like, you know what? We got to give the fans something that they'll enjoy, and I think this is going to be a really great basketball game to watch tomorrow.
Yeah, it should be. And can I just say, I want go back to the Battle for Atlantis. Go back to Maui. I want to see that. I know it's you don't get to go every year, and it's all this stuff. But I don't think we're going back to Maui again next year. I don't think we're going to Battle for Atlantis next year.
Are they not inviting us, Ryan?
I don't know.
Like, did we somehow we won too much? So they're not can't let Duke
I don't know, man. It's one of those things where it's like you don't think about it in any month besides November. But like, I'd love to have Thanksgiving and be watching Duke basketball in Maui or in the Bahamas. So. But no, I mean, if they're not going to go to these things, they have done a great job scheduling teams that they need to put some good tests on their non-conference schedule. But yeah, Kansas is the real deal. This game is going to be fun. I think we match up better against Kansas. Like, I think we're more well prepared for Kansas than we would have been against Kentucky. I do feel like if you flip-flop as far as in the schedule goes, that Kentucky game with the Kansas game, like it could have been the same result against Kansas in the first game, just because another more experienced team, you're not really you kind of know what you're getting in Dickinson, but the rest of the team, they've been around for a little bit, but it's just they're a really solid team. With Kentucky, we just didn't know what we were going to get with, as far as that was their first big game as a group of really older guys. So now that they're prepared and kind of know what to expect when coming into a game like this, I do have a lot more confidence. It's just going to be, in my opinion, it's let Dickinson do his thing and see what Malik Brown and Kaman can do against him, which I personally think Duke has I think Kansas is at a matchup disadvantage when it comes to Dickinson, especially if they're going to make him defend both Brown and Maluach. So super excited to see how Duke game plans for that matchup. And there's nothing that we have shown this year that doesn't give me a lack of confidence in our defensive ability to scheme for him. So, but yeah, they got a lot of veteran guys. They've been playing together for a couple years now, at least. So it's going to be another really good test. I don't know why I have this like unnecessary unneeded confidence in us in this game. I don't like, they played fine against Arizona. It wasn't amazing, but like they did some really good things. I don't know. I just have some weird confidence that's just been growing over me since that Arizona game.
Well, listen, as Quinn Cook loves to say, Duke's never the underdog. So I think in so many ways you feel great going into big time games like this. Kansas 5-0. They've got wins over Howard, Oakland, and UNC Wilmington. Their games against a power conference competition. You've got a win at home over UNC 92-89, where Kansas was up big. The Tar Heels came roaring back, but Kansas was able to put them away in the final 2 minutes of that one and pick up a win. And then the Champions Classic before the Duke-Kentucky game, Kansas had just an 8-point victory over Michigan State. So a lot of people high on what this team can do. I do think Kansas is a good basketball team when you've got Hunter Dickinson, who's back for another season of college basketball. Flory Badunga on the interior. Duke remembers him heavily in the recruitment period. So Rylan Griffin from Alabama is a premier shooter. Zeke Mayo got a lot of really good players on this Kansas squad. But in some of those big games, they've been susceptible so far this season.
Yeah, defensively is where I'm interested to see if Duke can kind of have an offensive breakout game here. We know they can fill it up. And not that you did it on purpose or forgot about him, but AJ Storr is a really good player too. He can score the heck out of the ball. Was Wisconsin's like premier guy, number one option. Like they have a lot of really good guys, and I know like a few of them are transfers, like you said, Rylan Griffin from Alabama. They're still putting it together, but defensively, there's just no one on the team, maybe besides KJ Adams, who's like, oh man, that's like that's their number one defender. I believe. I haven't watched a lot of them this year, but in years past, he's kind of been their solid glue lockdown guy. So I'm very interested to see if Duke can come out with some offensive firepower. And then with the way we've been playing defense, I mean, what better test than one of the best offensive teams in the country so far this year, and normally are in past years with Bill Self teams. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm very, like I said earlier, very interested to see how we match up with Dickinson. I think we do have the advantage, especially with former ACC Defensive Player of the Year, Malik Brown, on our side now. Dickinson's tall enough to where he could cause some problems for Brown, but I just think Brown is very physical, just a very fundamentally sound defender that can make it difficult for Dickinson. I don't know if you're ever going to fully stop a guy like that who can score at will, but I think where you can try to work him a lot is going to be on when he's playing defense on guys like Kaman and Malik, just moving him around a lot, tiring him out, wearing him down. I mean, we have the size advantage when Kaman's out there. So go after him, run some sets for him to get the game started and set the tone, and see if you can't wear him out a little bit more and make it a little bit tougher for him when he's playing offense.
The friends in our friends in Vegas, our partners there at FanDuel right now, have Duke as a 2.5-point favorite over the Jayhawks. The ESPN Basketball Power Index and analytics have Duke as a 70% chance to win this one. Kansas 30. So I mean, yeah, the numbers are backing Duke and kind of this confidence that we're feeling, Ryan.
I didn't know that. I didn't look at the lines yet. That you saw my face. That was shocking. I would have given Kansas 2-3 points for sure. Cause yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that doesn't change my confidence at all. I mean, if anything, it makes it a little bit better, but yeah, that's interesting. I kind of like going into with the underdog mentality in my head, but now we're going to go into
we can keep it. More. Yeah. We can keep
it. I'm fine with that. It's, that's surprising, but yeah, I think that just kind of goes to show where Vegas, who are the experts when it comes to this stuff, obviously there's public betting involved too. Duke normally gets a lot of public bets, so if they're an underdog, it's going to go public money is probably going to go on Duke. So there's more to these lines than just like overall skill, but I do think it just goes to show the potential of this Duke team and where people think they can play, and the matchup issues that Duke will cause Kansas. Especially, and I also think on the wing too, we have bigger guards. Harris isn't a very big guard for Kansas, and so like there's just some, like I said, some size advantages and some matchup issues that I think Duke poses for Kansas. And I if we go in there and take care of business, like I think we have a good chance too. I think it'll kind of put the rest of the country back on like, okay, that Kentucky game was kind of a fluke. It was their first big game with a youngish team. Like, let's see what this team can do going forward.
I can't wait to watch it. I think it's going to be epic. The Duke game against Kansas tomorrow night. It's a late one again, not as late as Friday night. It'll be 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. It's Kansas versus Duke. Ryan, the time is always so greatly appreciated. You're on X there at the Duke Nation. How can people best support you? What do you want to promote?
Yeah, just follow on X and Instagram at the Duke Nation. You can follow on TikTok if you want as well. But otherwise, Crazy Cast live post game shows and that turn into podcasts as well. So come hang out after games, and we put comments up on the screen for people to react to and talk with us about. So come hang out.
Awesome. We'll do this again soon, man. Thanks for the time today. See you, pal.
Appreciate you, JJ. Thank you.
Ryan Lohman joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Really good stuff and insight from him, and appreciate the time that he takes out of his schedule to join us here. Going to be a fun one tomorrow night. Duke and Kansas. We've got more content coming your way. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.